You're at a loud party. Music playing, 20 conversations happening at once. You can barely hear the person standing right in front of you. And then, across the room, someone says your name. You heard it instantly. Through all of that noise. How is that even possible? What you just experienced is one of the strangest things the human brain does, and the explanation will change the way you think about your own mind. This happens to every single person on the planet. It doesn't matter how loud the room is. It doesn't matter how deep in conversation you are. The moment someone says your name, something inside you snaps to attention. We've all experienced it. Most of us just assume it's normal, just how hearing works. But it's not. What your brain does in that fraction of a second is one of the most complex and unsettling things it's capable of. And we only started understanding it in the 1950s, thanks to one of the strangest experiments in psychology history. Because the real question isn't how you hear your name. The real question is what your brain is doing with all the sounds you think you're ignoring. In 1953, a British cognitive scientist named Colin Cherry had a deceptively simple question. When you're in a noisy room, how do you focus on just one voice? To find out, he put headphones on volunteers. He played two completely different recordings, one in each ear, at exactly the same time. Two voices, two messages, happening simultaneously. Then he told the subjects to focus only on what they heard in one ear. Just track that one voice. Shadow it word by word. Easy enough. But then Cherry asked them about the other ear, the one they were deliberately ignoring. And the results were striking. They remembered almost nothing. Not the content, not the topic. Some couldn't even tell what language it was in. One subject couldn't say for certain if the ignored ear had heard a human voice at all. Their brain had filtered it out so completely that it left almost no trace. Cherry called this selective attention. The brain, he said, chooses one signal and suppresses everything else. He thought he had his answer, but what nobody expected was what came next. 6 years after Cherry's experiment, a psychologist named Neville Morey decided to push the test further. Same setup. Headphones, two messages, one ear to focus on, one ear to ignore. But this time, Morey hid something inside the ignored message. Right in the middle of the voice the subjects were told to block out, he slipped in their own name. The result stopped him cold. About 1 in 3 subjects heard it. 30% of people caught their own name in the ear they were completely, deliberately ignoring. Their brain noticed something it was theoretically not processing, and that broke Cherry's model entirely. If the brain was truly filtering out the ignored channel, nothing from it should get through. Nothing. But a name did. Which means your brain isn't just passively listening to what you tell it to listen to. It's secretly monitoring everything else at the same time. Running a background scan on every sound in the environment, looking for something specific. And the number one thing it's searching for, in every room, in every crowd, in every conversation you're not part of, is your name. But that just creates a bigger question. Why your name specifically? Why not any other word? The answer starts before you could talk, before you could walk, before you had any concept of identity at all. When you were born, your name was just a sound. But your brain started hearing it almost immediately. Your parents said it dozens of times a day. Caregivers repeated it every time they picked you up, fed you, looked at you. By 6 months old, 6 months, infants already respond preferentially to their own name over other words. Researchers at the Max Planck Institute confirmed this in a 2003 study. A 6-month-old baby will turn toward the sound of their own name faster than toward any other word in their language. That's before they understand what a name is. What's happening is that the brain is building a template. Neuroscientists call it a hyperactivated neural pattern, a sound blueprint so deeply encoded through repetition that it gets flagged for priority processing regardless of what else is happening. By your adult years, your brain has heard your name somewhere between 30 and 50,000 times. That repetition has carved a groove so deep in your auditory system that no amount of background noise can fully mask it. But here's where it gets strange. Brain imaging studies reveal that your name doesn't activate the same regions as other familiar words. It activates something different entirely. It lights up the prefrontal cortex, the temporal lobe, and the amygdala. And the amygdala has nothing to do with language. It deals with something much older. But what nobody predicted was what connecting your name to that region actually means. The amygdala is one of the oldest structures in the human brain. It evolved millions of years before language existed, long before humans had names. Its job is simple and absolute: detect threats, trigger response. It's the part of your brain that makes you flinch at a sudden sound. That makes your heart rate spike before you even know why. And somewhere in the course of human evolution, sometime after language appeared, your brain wired your name directly into that system. Think about the logic. For most of human history, if someone called your name in a noisy environment, it meant one of very few things. You were needed, you were being warned, or you were in danger. None of those are situations you can afford to miss. So the brain did what it always does with survival-critical signals. It bypassed the slow, conscious attention system and routed it through the fast lane. Researchers at the University of California measured how fast this happens. From the moment the sound waves of your name hit your eardrum to the moment your amygdala fires, less than 150 milliseconds. That is faster than you can blink, faster than you can form a conscious thought. You don't hear your name and then pay attention. You pay attention, and then you realize you heard your name. Your brain moved before you did. But the most unsettling part of all of this, the part that changes what this phenomenon actually means, is what happens when you're not even conscious. Sleep researchers have known for decades that your brain doesn't fully switch off at night. Certain systems stay active, monitoring, and one of the most consistent findings in sleep science is that your own name is one of the few stimuli that can cause a measurable spike in brain activity during deep sleep, even when you wake up with no memory of it. Someone whispers your name across a quiet room while you're asleep, and your brain reacts. Not enough to wake you, but enough to register. In 2014, scientists at the MRC Cognition and Brain Sciences Unit in Cambridge took this even further. They played recordings to patients in a vegetative state. Patients who showed no external signs of awareness, no voluntary movement, no eye tracking, no visible response to anything. They played a variety of sounds, music, spoken words, environmental noise, and then they played each patient's own name. Using EEG equipment that tracks electrical activity across the brain, they found that in some patients, the brain responded. The same neural signature that appears in conscious adults when they hear their own name showed up in patients who, by every clinical measure, were unaware of their surroundings. Their brain was still scanning, still running the background check, still looking for the one sound it had been trained to prioritize since before they could speak. Your name, it turns out, is almost impossible to fully shut out. But none of that is the most surprising thing science has found about this. The final piece reframes everything. In 2006, a team of neuroscientists ran an fMRI study comparing how the human brain responds to two very specific stimuli. The first, seeing your own face in a photo. The second, hearing your own name spoken aloud. Both are deeply personal. Both are tied to your sense of self, but they don't activate the brain the same way. The name one, hearing your own name activated deeper, more automatic, more evolutionarily ancient regions of the brain than seeing your own reflection did. Which means, in a strict neurological sense, your name is more essentially you than your face is. You have been walking around your entire life believing your identity lives in the mirror. But your brain made its decision about what was most fundamentally you before you were old enough to recognize your own reflection. Your name came first, and your brain never forgot it. Your brain is not a passive receiver. It is a tireless, constantly running filter, scanning every room you walk into, every crowd you move through, every conversation you are not part of, looking for the one sound it has been chasing since the first weeks of your life. So the next time you hear your name cut through a room full of noise, remember, that wasn't luck. That was your brain doing something extraordinary in under 150 milliseconds without asking for your permission. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever heard your name clearly, turned around, and found that nobody said anything? Because that has its own explanation. And it's just as strange as everything you heard today. Tell me in the comments. And if this made you see your own mind a little differently, you know what to do.